business casual. Bad cholesterol, business casual. Extra virgin splattering Adderall. See a sucker suits fall, business casual.
Hey, this is Steve Baltin, and you are tuned into My Turning Point with special guest Mike Patton, who many of you know for his work with Faith No More, or Mr. Bungle, or Tomahawk. Today we're talking about the new Tomahawk record, how meeting composer John Zorn changed his career, the freedom he enjoys as an artist, and much more. So I hope you enjoy this conversation as much as we did. It's a really interesting one. I'm sure you found that the stuff you did in the 8 years in between Tomahawk records, you brought stuff back to this record that, you probably learned during the 8-year interval. I'm sure things came back to Tonic Immobility. I can't talk today, by the way. I was just telling my producer, I'm like 7th interview in 3 days, so I'm brain dead. So if I fuck up things, but Tonic Immobility, I'm sure you brought things to it from the 8-year interval that you're like, I hadn't even thought about that. And I'm sure the other band members did too.
I mean, those guys recorded, this was a really weird record. They recorded the stuff without me about, I want to say 3 years ago in Nashville. And I was busy doing some other crap and, having some personal issues. And I'm like, I'm not ready to do this. So I'm not coming to Nashville. And they said, okay, just do the do the vocals, at home. Which I've done before on Tomahawk records and many others. The difference was it just took me a minute to really sink into the music. Like it sounded great and I loved it, but I was like, how am I gonna tackle this? And what I decided was to make it ultra minimal. Like I'm not playing, no samplers, no over orchestrating, no strings or organs or, I'm not adding anything. I'm gonna just sing and really respect the music that was in front of me. And that's a hard thing for me to do personally. Most singers will probably laugh at that, but it's hard for me to do less rather than more. And this was a really good, you were talking about learning stuff, during, over a period of time. I learned, hey, step back. You don't have to be the forefront all the time. You don't have to assert every idea. Let the music speak. And that's a really interesting skill and something I think I'm still learning.
Well, all right. I want to come back to that in 1 second because we kind of veered off. Well, not veered off course. This is all course, but let's tie that in with your turning point moment and then come back to that because I have a feeling that they probably intersect a little bit if I'm correct. Because now your turning point moment, I believe Monica told me, was meeting John Zorn, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so when did that happen? And what makes that your turning point moment? What was it that you learned from? And why I bring that back in with this is, I'm sure that if that's your turning point moment, I'm sure it's meeting him, you learned quite a bit from him as well.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know I was learning, but I was learning. And it happened in when he produced the first Mr. Bungle record, when we first met him. And then he had me, he liked, for whatever reason, he liked what I did and invited me to participate in a few of his projects. You know how prolific this guy is, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, it's an honor to be asked to play with him or to collaborate with him. And he did that with me for whatever reason. I have no idea why, but it just, it changed. Like it gave me more courage and more, like confidence in my voice as an instrument, not as just being like, I think pre-Zorn, I was just a singer,
Right.
Hey, I come in here, I come in there, I come out. He taught me how to hear the voice and hear music differently. Whereas, like a band like Phantomos that I formed would have never been possible without his influence. And what he taught me, specifically in that project, was, hey, your voice doesn't have to be, you don't have to be like the chorus guy and the cute guy. Your voice can be anything you want it to be. And it made me realize that, holy shit, yeah. Oh, wait, I actually have an ability here that I can. And so with Phantomos, I decided, I made a conscious decision to make the voice not a voice, to make it more like a second guitar, and in a really disjointed, kind of way. And I credit that to him. So if you call it a turning point, like that's really an important one for me, because he taught me how to hear things differently.
Well, it's so interesting because, as I said, I think, why I mentioned that then is tying that back in with the learning and the process that you mentioned in making the Tomahawk record. It's funny. Mm-hmm. I mean, for you, are there things that you now look back on, as you say, that when you started working with John, he was teaching you, though you didn't know you were learning. So as you continue to learn, and the other thing about it too, man, is I think, I talk about this also with thousands of artists. Look, you get older, you get more comfortable with yourself, you're more secure, and you also lose that feeling that you have when you're a 20-year-old kid, like I did when you're an idiot, when you're like, I know everything in the world and no one can teach me shit,
Yeah, well, luckily, I don't have that malady. I'm always willing to learn and always willing to work with people, and that's why collaborations to me are, as opposed to bands, are more, or I wouldn't say more, but they're just as rewarding, because you're always going to learn something. Like I work with, DJ Kubert, and he's like, scratching like a fucking maniac. And like, I'm learning rhythms from him. So like everything that you do, or every, footstep that you take, basically is a learning experience. And so I keep waiting for that moment where I'm going to sit back and rest on my laurels, but you know what? It ain't happening. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen. I'm too curious. I'm too restless, I guess. I wish I could, but no, it's not going to happen.
Well, it's really interesting because it's funny. I mean, I've listened to the album a couple times, and the first thing I noticed on there, and of course, might just be projecting because I'm such a Psycho fan, but when I was listening to the opening of Sure, it felt like Tom Waits, What's He Building in there to me. And I don't know, I'm going to guess you're a fan. Are you a fan?
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. Of course.
So
no, I channel him a lot. Yeah. I channel him a lot. Even though I can't really be him. There are moments in every band that I'm in, really, where we reference, people like, hey man, more Tom Araya, or more Tom Waits, or more fucking Nancy Sinatra, or more like these things actually are said in the studio. and it helps me because I'm not a learned, trained musician. I don't read notes. I don't speak that language. So when I'm working, and I purposefully work with people that are better than me, all of them, every guy in every band that I've played in is better than me. They know more, and they teach me, they actually teach me by whether it's osmosis or, a lot of times in Faith No More, what we would do is reference movies like, hey, make it more like Paris, Texas, not Paris, but Paris, Texas. And I knew exactly what that meant. Like, make it more Western, make it more like fucked up and funky. And there's millions of examples like that where band members, and it's all about communication, really. It's all about communication and how a unit becomes a thing. And, it's tough to do for a band, different people, different ideas, all that kind of stuff. But one time a day, it will come together. And there's so many examples, but it's really about, for me, being open-minded enough to listen. And listening is like one of the hardest things for a musician to do. Because once you've achieved, some things, you think you know it. You think you know it all, but you don't know shit. Okay? So keeping your ears open and your mind open is the most important thing. Listen to others, and then you'll get better.
Oh, no question. That's what I was getting at earlier with the idea of as you get older, people getting more comfortable and becoming more open and, all that. But it's interesting. The reason I asked about Tom Waits specifically, and it's I love the movie reference too. And I'm going to ask you about that in a second, because I also, used to be a film writer and still a big film buff. But what I was getting is, are there artists that you look to or admire for the way that they've been able to constantly reinvent themselves, evolve, change, do different things? Going back to what we were talking about earlier, the artistic freedom, and how you said it's kind of a birthright, So for you, who are those artists that you look to for the way that they've been able to just constantly reinvent themselves?
It's not really, I don't even know if you have to reinvent yourself. If you really have something that you're on, if you're riding a wave that's constantly moving, then stay on it. However, I will say that Tom Waits for sure has been one of those guys that he jumps off a wave and he catches another one. Nick Cave, another guy. I don't even know. The guy can barely even sing, but he's like making amazing music, and really it's compelling shit. And it's orchestrated in a great way. Who else? Fuck. Oh, maybe I'll stop there.
Okay. I was going to say, I love Nick Cave too. And it's interesting though, because all of these artists, I feel like, found new creative grooves as they got older. It's funny because Nick Cave in the last probably 5 to 7 years has become, to me, like the best live performer in music. And I've seen him for years, but he definitely is an artist who's gotten more comfortable. Oh yeah.
He's amazing. I should say Bjork too. Bjork like really did that. I saw her grow up as a kid and then, become whatever the hell she is now. And I think that she really did that as well.
Oh, no question. Amazing. I'm a huge Bjork fan as well. And again, when you look at what she's done playing with orchestras and going back and in the movie, yeah, she's an artist who's done that so well. But now I'm curious, and it's funny because this ties in because she's a movie person. Well, wait, before we come out of that, there's so many things you're saying that then prompt other questions. But, it's interesting that you mentioned the communication in a band. And obviously, as you say, this was a weird record. So it's interesting. Did it take you guys a minute to find your groove as a band because you made it in separate places?
Not really. No. I mean, well, there were two grooves. There was the band and then me, because they recorded it without me, and they nailed it. Like they sent me the stuff, and I was like, "Damn, this is amazing." But it took me a second to find their groove, so to speak, and so like there's no formula to any of this stuff. I guess my point would be, when you're in a band, okay, it's a band. It's a team. It's a collection of players, and they all have to be in sync. And sometimes they can be out of sync and then find their sync again. And I think that's what happened with this new record. Like, I somehow brought my stuff in, and it made it all, glued together. And the guys were like so happy, like, oh my God. There was a moment where, I think a lot of the guys thought, oh, this record's never going to get made, because God knows what Patton's doing. So, every band is a chemical experiment, and they're all different. And this one is one of the most clear that I've been in. Meaning, Dwayne writes the fucking music, we execute it, and then I do my thing, and then we kind of make sure that it all works together. So in hindsight, yeah, Tomahawk is like actually a really great and easy band to be in, because I got my role. Everybody knows their roles. It's like a really good sports team. Everybody does their job, and then somehow, hopefully, we find the magic in it.
Okay, so at what point in the making, I know exactly, at what point in the making of this record did you feel like you found the magic? For you, because like you said, it was made in two parts. So was there a point early on where you felt like you found the magic?
Maybe like 2 or 3 songs in. Like, that's usually what happens with me. It's like, I'll do like a gibberish version of every tune just to get it, approved, or hey, I'm on the right track, like, to get some feedback. And after Dwayne told me, like, after like 2 or 3 tunes, I'm like, okay, I got this. Yeah. And that's the sort of camaraderie that, the kind of, team play that a band needs, is, self-criticism and also like calling each other on their bullshit. And Dwayne did that masterfully.
So for you, I mean, you say it took 2 or 3 songs to sort of get your groove. What were those first songs that you did where you found like, okay, and then you got into that groove? Were there songs early on that sort of set the tempo for the record for you?
Let me think. Valentine. The Valentine song. That was the one, because it sounded so much like Tomahawk, version 1. Like, it almost sounded like something that could have been on our first record. So I'm like, oh, I know exactly what to do with this. Yep. And I dove in, and bingo. But also, like, just kind of hearing like a tune like Business Casual, which I can't remember the working title of that one, but there was so much space in the music, you know, that I'm not very used to. I'm not about filling up space. Like, that's what I do. So there was so much space in it, and it really sounded so clear, and it was recorded so well that I was just like, okay, I got to really rethink my approach here. I can't use like 10 harmonies and add instruments and no. I'm just going to take it for what it is. And I mean, almost like a punk rock record, really, you know, just like, hey, I'm a singer, fucking sing or scream or do whatever you do. So yeah, like early on, yeah, there were just like a few tunes that just triggered me. And I'm like, yep, I get it.
Well, now that's so interesting though. And this is what I was starting to get to earlier. And then I got sidetracked by the turning point, but it's funny. I look back at, right, to me, you know, and again, this is another thing I attribute to, you know, coming a little bit with age is you also sort of, look, for me, from a writing standpoint, right, when you're younger, there's this like thing about wanting to use all the big words and show off everything you know. And then as you get older, I look at someone like a Raymond Carver, for example, who's one of my favorite authors. And it's like, dude, that simplicity is way more devastating than being able to say that, you know, I mean, he could say in, you know, one page what it takes someone else 20 pages to say. And I look at it like a, you know, to me, maybe it's funny. You mentioned like a punk rock record. I don't think there'll ever be a more punk rock record than John Lennon Plastic Ono Band because of the message in that and the power of what he says. So for you, it's interesting finding that, you know, sort of groove where it's like, okay, now I see like, you know, that sort of simplicity. I mean, it's something, and you said at the beginning, you're still learning it. So have there been points where you realize that, or when you go back and look at this album now, are there moments that really stand out to you where you're like, okay, this would have been a point where I would have put in this or the harmonies or done this or whatever. And it's like, you know, now no,
I don't listen back to it. I can't do it. It's like heart wrenching for me to listen back to any of the records I've done. This one I've listened to, you know, more recently, but like, you know, who is your own harshest critic? Yourself, right? At least that's the way it works for me. That's the way it works for me. And like, I'm always, if I listen to like, you know, records I've done, it's always like, oh God. Like I only hear the mistakes. I only hear, oh God, I should have done that or hit that note or added this or taken back that. So, yeah, I haven't listened back to the Tomahawk record in a while. But I did because it's the most recent one that I've done. And I gotta say, I mean, I think I like it, you know, I like it and I'm proud of it. And I'm glad that, because another thing that I set out to do was not to be metric, you know, not to sing like a normal singer, like maybe more like a fucking beat poet or something like that. Like go over the bar lines and go make it should be like really fluid. And David was great at this, you know, so I actually channeled a lot of him. Like he's a big influence, you know, on me, especially for this record, because he just like talks, you know, and it just, there's no verse, there's no chorus. It just goes, you know, it goes up and down. And I really tried to like, you know, emanate that, you know, in my own way. And I think so. Like, you know what? Who else was great at that? Sinatra. He went over the bar lines like crazy. Like the guy was never in a hurry. It's not like 1, 2, 3, 4. He was just moving. he was like a wave, he was like a fucking, it was like wind blowing and it just sounded natural. And that I was really trying to, and I've never been good at that. So there you go. Another learning experience.
All right. No, it's so funny what you were saying about not listening back and how it's hard. Every artist is their own worst critic. I mean, it's become I use this joke all the time, but it's like, how do you tell the narcissistic sociopath? The artist who goes back and listens to their own music. But, I mean, a lot of times artists will have to go back and listen to it, whether it's for a retrospective or a greatest hits or to learn the songs for tour or whatever. And, that's always an interesting thing, because what I find is then talking to artists is once you've been away from it for a while, you actually get to, perspective on the songs and hear them almost from the point of view of a fan. So it's interesting going back then and looking at the early Tomahawk stuff or looking at other stuff from your career. Are there things then that you can sort of distance yourself from and appreciate in a different way?
Yes, absolutely. And you're totally right. Time makes that easier to do. Like, I will go back sometimes and listen to say like a Bungle record or some collaboration I did, with like Jean-Claude Vanier, for example. Like, was this record as good as I thought it was? Like, that's what I think. And then I'll listen to it and go, well, could have been better. And almost always that's what I think. and it sucks, but it's like not a fun experience. But sometimes you get like pleasantly surprised, and go, oh my God, we did that. Like, how the hell? What the, and it's almost like you said, like listening to a cover band. Like, I'm not in there anymore. So it's very, it's surreal in a sense. You're listening to someone else sing your music, and you know the words and you know the notes, but it ain't you anymore. So after time, I think that harsh criticism softens a little bit, at least for me.
Oh, it's so funny, man. I love that, because I always go back to Alison Mosshart, who, I don't know if you know her. I'm sure you've met her over the years. And, she was telling me this great story about how she was in a bar. Alison Mosshart from The Kills and Dead Weather.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Yeah.
She was telling me a story about
personally, but I know her music. Yeah.
Yeah, she was telling me that she was in a bar once and she's like listening to the song and she's like, wow, this is a really cool song. And it took her a full 90 seconds before she's like, oh shit, that's me.
Yeah.
So have you had that experience, or when you go back and hear your stuff now, is there, and it's like, okay, for example, when you guys were touring, Faith No More was scheduled to do some dates last year with System. Do you go back and revisit the stuff just to sort of, reacclimate yourself to it for tour, or no?
Well, of course I would. If we were going to do the tour, I'd have to relearn it. But I guess what you're asking is it in my mind, or do I have to relearn it? And the answer is I have to relearn it. It's outside of me now. It's not me. So, and that goes for like almost any band that I tour with. It's we call it wood shedding. And when you shed, what you're doing is getting reacclimated with your own music, which is a really uncomfortable thing sometimes. And then that's before actual rehearsals. Then you go to rehearsals and then you do it with everybody in the room. So yeah, I would have absolutely listened to that stuff, and I probably would have cringed sometimes, but that's life.
We'll make this last question, but then it's funny, what I was asking, or what I was are there particular songs that are moments that you can look at or that you can step back from and be like, all right, now, and I mean, going back and looking at it, regardless of, band or collaboration. I guess what I'm asking is there one or two favorites for you that you, or songs that, it's interesting, not necessarily perfect, but you either reappreciate or that become almost prophetic. And when you go back and hear them, you're like, wow, I'm surprised how applicable that still is to where I am today.
Yeesh. Nah, man. I got nothing for you.
It's all right.
They're all, I mean, when you go back and listen, there's an equal amount of dread and sometimes surprise. But I can't really point out one or two. I mean, I'm trying to think. No, it's like that with every band, every song. Like, oh God, I didn't do that. Okay, I'm gonna do that better this time. And this, it comes with perspective and age, and I think that's, like I said before, who's the worst critic? Yourself. And I think that is a great way to live. Like, you have to be your own worst critic.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah. Otherwise, who else knows what the fuck you're doing?
Well, it's funny though, because at the same time, I think that it can be to a fault, so it's like, it's kind of what I was getting at too, is like, it's interesting because again, as someone who gets to talk to so many artists, because you say otherwise who else knows, but I mean, for artists, you become so hard on yourself that it's sometimes hard to step back and appreciate. I go back to, I use this example a lot, but it makes sense. It's like Don Henley, right? Whether you're an Eagles fan or not, there's no question the band's had a big impact and the guy's a great songwriter. And we were talking about writing Desperado, and he's like, I hate to ever admit this publicly because I don't want to ruin the song for people, but he's like, when I listen to that, all I hear is being 24 years old. And I'm like, I wish we could record the drums differently, And it's like, so yeah. I think artists become such perfectionists though.
In a sense, that's what I'm saying is re-listening to your stuff when you get to a certain age becomes futile. Like I can't change it, so why am I going to listen? And if I do listen, I'm going to like fucking get like anxiety, out my fucking brain, It's like, you can't change it. It is what it is. It's a document. And I've learned to kind of, I re-listen sometimes to things that I've done, and I've learned to just kind of let it go and go, well, that's what we were doing then. Which is an easy way of saying, well, we kind of fucked it up. But at the time it was, I can honestly say most of the stuff that I've done was really honest at that moment, like we were recreating a moment and taking a Polaroid of us at that time, which, hey man, families do that shit. Fathers do that shit. Why can't we?
Yeah. I do. What do you want to add? I didn't ask you about.
Did I answer your question?
You did. And it's funny because it's, again, like I say, it's authentic to, like I said, 99.9% of artists, who have that same view. And I get it. But that's why it's always fascinating to me, to go back and hear it from the point of view of, like I said, a detached point of view.
I mean, listen, sometimes I'll go back and listen to stuff and go, hey, that was pretty fucking great. I can't believe, and I can't remember how we did it. Like that sort of like wonder or mystique is cool. Even though I was in the middle of it, even though maybe I wrote it at times, it goes to a certain part of your brain where you're just like, wait a second, what the hell is this? I have that feeling with Mr. Bungle a lot. Like, oh my God, I wrote that. How did we do that? Or Faith No More. I mean, man, almost any band I've ever been in. Like, how the hell did we do that? And that just sort of, I guess, belies the thought that things are happening in real time when you make a record, and you're really in a zone, and there's really things. They're going a million miles an hour, and you got to make decisions quickly, and it's got to be very cut and dry and decisive. But then you listen back to it, and it's like, it doesn't sound like that. So I don't know. Sometimes it cracks me up just to listen to my own stuff, but I don't do it often, believe me.
Yeah. All right. Well, if you could ever go back and bring yourself to listen to, to Tonic Immobility, what are there moments that you think like, okay, or what do you think you would think about it if you could go back and listen to it in 15 years?
Too soon.
Fair enough. Totally get it. That's funny, no, because I remember I was talking to Ani DeFranco not long ago. I was asking her what she takes from her new album, and she's like, I don't know, ask me in 20 or 30 years.
Yeah, that's an artist right there.
Yeah.
I mean, look, I could tell you some stupid crap that I would fix or not, but it doesn't matter. Like, what really matters is, how does the album make you feel? We're not in science. We're in the feeling business. We want to make people feel stuff. And sometimes even the people that create it don't know what they're feeling at the time. And I would put myself in that category. So, yeah, I'll have to take the Fifth Amendment on that one.
Fair enough, and all good. Anything you want to add that we didn't talk about? Because we covered a lot of shit.
No, I mean, unless there's something... I mean, I hate talking about myself, so if there's something you need to know, let me know. Otherwise, I will bid you adieu.
I don't know. You said you hate talking. I mean, that's another thing. Most artists hate talking about themselves. So given the opportunity, what's the one song or artist that you would rather talk about?
Say that again? You're talking too fast, man.
Sorry, I said, because you said you hate talking about yourself, which most artists do. Given the opportunity, is there one song or artist that you would rather talk about? And we'll make that last one, wrap up on that.
Okay. That's a good question. Let me think. Kind of caught me off guard there. Okay. Sampa the Great is the artist, and the song is called Final Form. Do you know it?
I don't. In fact, now I'm Googling Sampa the Great because...
It's a little off the map. And it's hip-hop, but I don't know why. I can't get that fucking song out of my head. So I would rather talk about her. And I think she lives, I think she's in New York now, but originally from Africa. And had a weird, backstory. I don't know much about her. So I would ask questions about her. Who is Sampa the Great?
Now you got me damn curious, so I'm looking her up now. All right, now I'm going to go and check out the song right away. All right.
Do it. Play it. You're going to fucking die. It's fucking so good.
All right. Cool, I will definitely check it out.
And by the way, it's poison. It's poison because you're not going to get it out of your fucking ears for 10 days.
All right.
So I just gave you a curse.
This is fascinating because, I'm looking her up now. I'm going to wait to play it, but it's, she's actually apparently, so she was born in Zambia, but yeah, she was freaking huge in Australia, man. She's won all these ARIA awards.
Oh, you know what? I think she grew up in Australia, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was wrong on that. I think Melbourne.
In fact, Final Form won the best hip hop release at the ARIA Awards as well.
Sheesh. Who knew?
I didn't, man.
I mean, that stuff, that stuff, doesn't exactly translate over here. But, man, I heard her and I was just like, oh, my God. Or at least that track was absolutely devastating, mate, as they say down there.
Nice. Yeah. All right, cool, dude. Thanks so much for your time. This was a pleasure. I really appreciate it.
Okay, we done?
We're done. I'm gonna go and listen. I'm not gonna keep you on the line while I listen to it, but I've got it queued up on my computer right now.
Dude, listen to that fucking shit. Trust me.
I will. Like, it's literally on my computer here. Well, because you can see, it's queued up, ready to go.
Sweet. All right, man.
Cool,
Thank
dude.
you so much.
Congratulations on the record. Thanks so much. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Ciao.
Hey, this is Steve Baltin. You've been listening to My Turning Point with special guest Mike Patton. Thanks.